This video is sponsored by Bespoke Post. Lost in the desert, a man contemplates where his dead body could be discovered. A search helicopter had flown past, failing to spot him in the scorching heat. Burning his clothes, sleeping bag, even his backpack to try and signal anyone. He was left utterly alone. He hasn't had any water, food, or shelter for days. He writes a note to his wife, abandoning all hope. His eyes close, and the night passes. To his surprise, he awoke the very next day, his body having refused to let him die. The average human can survive 8 to 21 days without food. Without water, you can only live for 3 to 4 days before succumbing to thirst. Forced to survive in the desert for 10 days, Mauro Prosperi drank his own urine, consumed bats, and burned his possessions in hopes someone will find him. This is his story. Italian pentathlete Mauro Prosperi sits atop a police horse, watching the pedestrians and tourists scatter through the ornate piazzas of the Italian capital. From a distance, he appears a strong and vigilant guardian, carefully surveying neatly laid brickwork of the Roman streets. But inside, he's terribly, terribly bored. A native of Rome, he joined the Italian police back in 1973. And since Italy's police federation heavily subsidized national-level athletes, he put up with the humdrum nature of his daily life. He met his wife, Cinzia Pagliara, at a pre-Olympic pentathlon event. She was a Russian-English interpreter and soon became enamored with the strapping young Roman. The pentathlon included horse riding and fencing, so to her, it was like Mauro was engaged in an ancient battle between knights. He was an easygoing and positive person. Everything seemed possible with him. And within 6 months of their meeting, they were married. Not long after that, the couple had 3 children together, 2 girls and a boy. According to Mauro, Cinzia was a family woman. She always wanted children. He was good at adapting, so shifting to family life was difficult, but not an impossible task. For him, running was freedom. It was love. Nothing could change that. Cinzia, looking back, said that he wasn't able to fully integrate into fatherhood and husbandhood. He was, at his core, an adventurer. Cinzia called it selfishness, though she added it wasn't malicious. In her words, to believe that one's passions come before everyone else, it's selfish. The Marathon des Sables is literally translated to Marathon of the Sands, and Mauro was invited to participate by his closest friend, Giovanni Manzo, who he had known for about 7 years. The two of them ran together often, and since they were both physically and mentally fit athletes, an ultramarathon was just the kind of challenge they were looking for. Oh, wouldn't it be nice to be young and fit again? Wait, never mind. He was 39. Oh. The Marathon des Sables is a week-long ultra-marathon that spans a distance between 150 to 156 miles, snaking through the crags and dunes of the Moroccan desert. Organized by one Patrick Bauer, a French concert promoter who walked 200 miles through the Sahara in 1984, inspiring him to start this survival challenge. The specific routes and formats change year by year and are kept secret from the participants until the day before the race. We can't find sources to indicate exactly why, but it's possible they do this to keep people from training on the route to get an unfair advantage, and to make sure that no one attempts it without the support systems that keep the runners safe. It is a wilderness survival race after all. The race is broken down into 6 stages that you can run over the course of 7 days. Now, the Marathon des Sables, shortened to MDS, has been dubbed the hardest foot race on Earth. It's so difficult, in fact, that the organizers have a specific insurance policy now in case of not only injury, but death, including a clause about where to send your body in the event of your death. In fact, Just recently, in 2021, a man in his 50s passed away in the second stage of the marathon from heart-related conditions. He passed all the medical checks, but when you're out in the middle of the desert, anything can happen. There's a lot you need to bring with you when you go out into environments like the desert, or even just on a simple hike. But thanks to our sponsor, Bespoke Post, I have all the tools I need for everyday life. Bespoke Post is a monthly subscription service that delivers boxes of fantastic products from all sorts of up-and-coming brands. And here's the best thing, it's free to join. 90% of products are sourced from small businesses, many based in the US, including the chef's knife in the adventure box from California-based brand Messermeister, in collaboration with wilderness chef Adam Glick. With German steel and maple wood, Grill can not only make good dinners, but look cool while doing it.
It's about time we got knifeware worthy of the hot eats I'm serving.
Each month, Bespoke Post brings their members boxes full of cool stuff from outdoor gear, barware, home and kitchen goods, and more. They'll give you a quiz. No, not that quiz. And figure out your preferences to send you a curated box each month. Each one has a retail value of about $70, but you can get it for a cool $49. We got the Weekender box, which includes this classy bag that's perfect for, well, weekend trips where you can pack all your clothes and essentials. I can even fit all of my notebooks on top. We also got the Flip Box, which contains this gorgeous Damascus steel crafted knife with a handle made from upcycled skateboards. You can even preview the boxes you're about to receive, and if it doesn't speak to you, you can swap it out for a different one, or even skip the month entirely. You only pay for what you keep. To get 20% off your first box, click the link in the description and enter BREW at checkout, or go to bspk.me/brew. Giovanni knew that his friend had a wife and 3 children, so he told Mauro, "Feel free to accept or decline my invitation depending on your commitments to your family." This triggered a moment of hesitation in Mauro, but he wasn't deterred. In fact, it made him want to do it even more. Mauro decided to run the race, but never brought it up to Cinzia. She said that there was never a conversation like, "What do you think?" The conversation went, "I will leave in April." Today, the MDS attracts runners from all across the globe with up to 1,300 participants per year, forming a long snake of bodies stretching across the desert. But back in 1994, Mauro and Giovanni were among a short list of only 134. April 10th, 1994, Stage 1. The race began at the southern Moroccan town of Foum Zeged. The first stretch of the race was a breezy 18 miles across rolling salt beds and ended at the base of the mountains that divide Morocco and Algeria. Giovanni, looking back, said that his most intense memory of that day and the thing that characterized the whole race was the tearing winds of Morocco, where April's high winds rarely dip below 15 kilometers per hour. Each stage of the race is bookended by a rest period, where the runners set up a bivouac, a temporary camp, and sleep through the night. Mauro and Giovanni slept close together for warmth, as the desert temperatures can easily drop below 0 degrees Celsius. The second day was a 24-mile stint through the rocks and crags of the low mountains. Typically for this early portion of the race, it's difficult to lose track of the other participants. However, as the day went on and each runner settled into their own pace, almost all of them found themselves in solitude. April 12, 1994, Stage 3. The third stage of the race was a shorter 18-mile run through a series of sand dunes. This stage has been nicknamed the Doomsday by participants. Clever. The runners had to climb up and down 3-story high sand dunes. It takes a lot of energy to climb a fresh dune, so most of the participants form single-file lines to form makeshift staircases up and down each of these sandy hills. While training for the marathon, Giovanni would often slow down to reflect. As the two men were running, Giovanni would stop on mountaintops and stare out towards the horizon. He raced to find himself. He was absorbing where he was and who he was. In those same moments, Mauro was thinking about victory. In his own words, "For me, participating is not important. Winning is." April 13th, 1994. The fourth stage of the race is the hardest and longest. Designed to push the runners to their limits, it usually takes between 10 to 36 hours to finish. It's so grueling that the organizers give the participants an entire day to recoup after. In 1994, the stage was a whopping 53 miles, making focus the most important thing. Giovanni said that when you compete in such a race, you think about your priorities. Your priorities are to not lose your way. Mauro was coming in to run a section of this stage 25 miles long. The wind was against him, and as he cut across some dunes to save time, all heck broke loose. The wind started to pick up around Mauro as he crested the dune. Before long, the wind developed into a full-on sandstorm. Mauro's pace slowed to a crawl as he attempted to push his way through the wall of whirling sand. He realized quickly that it wasn't the big dune he should worry about. It was the small dunes. In a sandstorm, you can't rely on anything, but the large dunes are more stable than the small dunes. Dunes can collapse under their own weight, essentially rolling in the direction of the wind. The wind can carry a small dune far. Since large dunes are obviously heavier, it takes a much higher wind speed to get them to move. If Mauro didn't keep moving, they would quickly swallow him whole. The sandstorm lasted 8 hours. As Mauro emerged out of the swirling wind and sand, he laid out his things, curled up in his sleeping bag, and fell asleep. Mauro knew that he should stay put in a sandstorm. He was disappointed that he had to stop, but he figured that he got so off track that he was going to lose the race one way or another. It was better to rest and conserve energy. Giovanni was worried when he arrived at the checkpoint at the end of stage 4 because he expected to see Mauro since he was the stronger runner. Many other runners had been forced to stop during the storm, so he reassured himself there were many reasons he could be late, while other participants slowly filtered in. Now, in the cold darkness of the Saharan night, Giovanni felt Mauro's absence more than ever. Without his friend next to him for warmth, the cold was a solemn reminder that Mauro was even more alone than he was. April 14th, 1994. Rest day, second day since Mauro disappeared. The following morning, Mauro awoke early, folded up his sleeping bag, and ate an energy bar before getting back to running. The organizers instructed all participants to hold their position in case of a sandstorm, and Mauro knew that the Marathon des Sables often had participants referred to as walkers who didn't intend to win the race, just hike the distance. So he figured that if he could get a vantage point, he would find other waylaid runners. He clambered to the top of the highest dune he could see, and his heart dropped. He expected to see truck tracks, signs of a camp, or even a Land Rover, but he couldn't see anything. 8 hours of gale force winds had washed away any and all landmarks. The dunes around him had shifted, and now a great sea of sand opened up with him at its center, completely alone. He inspected his water bottle and realized the situation he was in. He had only about a finger's worth left at the bottom. He had drunk most of it the preceding day, and now, as he stared out at the sandy horizon, hoping to see anything, anyone, he felt the sweat slowly drip, drip, dripping down his forehead. Back at the bivouac, Giovanni was resting and waiting for word from his friend. Everyone was accounted for, save for Mauro, so multiple jeeps and a helicopter had been dispatched to look for him. Giovanni had hoped to see the organizers carting Mauro back to camp in the morning, and it would all be just a funny story. But as the day stretched on, hopes that this would be quickly resolved evaporated. Mauro was still optimistic until the afternoon. His thirst was mounting, but what finally succeeded in breaking his hope was a helicopter. At sunset, he heard it, the sound of rotors on the wind. He darted into his bag, pulling out the flare given to each runner for just this situation, and blasted it sky high. Unfortunately, to save on weight, the flares were small, about the size of a ballpoint pen. The helicopter never saw the piddly little flare and flew off into the distance. Mauro was crushed, filled not with fear but desperation. He watched the helicopter fly away until all that was left of it was a tiny dot. Mauro screamed, "Why are you leaving me?" to a silent horizon. Night sprawled across the desert, and the organizers announced that the race would begin as prepared the following morning. Situations like this had happened before, and typically, any lost souls were found in a day or so. But as Giovanni considered the thought of running alone, Mauro considered urinating in his water bottle to conserve moisture. April 15th to 17th, 1994, stage 5 to 6, 3rd to 5th day since Mauro disappeared. When Giovanni approached the finish line, he ignored the cameras and thought of Mauro. As he was running, he hoped that he would see Mauro at the finish line, and it would just be some big misunderstanding. But they weren't so lucky. Giovanni crossed the finish line and cried. He had to return to Italy, and it had been days since he had seen Mauro. The organizers were close to calling off the search, because after 5 days lost in the desert, unless you're immensely lucky or adapted for life there, you're as good as dead, and there's no more point in trying to find you. Cinzia found out that Mauro was missing in a call with her father. Since it was, the 90s, information didn't spread as quickly, and she only heard the news days into his ordeal. He had seen a news report that a Roman runner had gone missing in Morocco, but she didn't believe him. She said that he was probably finishing soon, and he'd call her when he was done. But her father was too angry with Mauro for leaving his daughter like that. Looking back, Cinzia said that they were all angry at Mauro. He was going to die doing something to himself and only himself. It was around this time that Mauro began moving again. Traveling mostly at night, he saw a set of 3 buildings in the distance. He was elated, thinking he would find people there. Luckily, there was one person there. Unfortunately, it was the long-dead body of a holy man, buried underneath an altar. It was a marabou, the final resting place of a Muslim hermit teacher. Mauro, seeking salvation, discovered only a man who had already found it. He then planted an Italian flag on the top of the marabou and went inside. It smelled like rats, but it was clean. That's when he heard it, a chirping sound echoing from deeper inside the building. He approached slowly and found a colony of bats hanging from the far wall. What he did in that moment felt so natural, so innate to him. He snatched one of the bats, mixed up the entrails with his blade after beheading it, and desperately sucked out the resulting mush for hydration and sustenance. He ate about 20 bats that way and buried them outside. April 18th, 1994, the 6th day since Mauro's disappearance, he heard another engine. He bolted outside and scanned the horizon. High above him, he saw a plane. He rushed to write "Help me" in the sand and start a fire as quickly as possible. He gathered up all his synthetic material, including his backpack and sleeping bag, to generate smoke. But as he lit it, another sandstorm hit. The smoke was lost in the storm, and the plane soared away, unaware that Mauro was ever there. He was devastated. He saw his life slipping away between his fingers. He had burned his pack and sleeping bag, so his options were running out fast. Mauro's mind then wandered to his family. Mauro knew that Italian police pensions only pay out 10 years after someone's disappearance. His only hope to get his wife and children support after his death was to make sure he died somewhere his body could be found. Mauro's mind drifted to forgiveness. He thought he had hurt someone. He thought he hurt his family, and this was his justice. He took a piece of charcoal and wrote out a note to his wife. "I want to be forgiven. Forgive me. I love you. Forgive me if I hurt you. Forgive me if I wasn't there for you or the kids." He was sure he was going to die. He wasn't afraid of dying, but of suffering. After he finished his note, he sat down and resolved to take his own life before the desert had the chance to. To survive in the desert takes not only planning, knowledge, and physical strength, it also requires an immense amount of luck. That being said, the number one way to keep yourself safe going out into nature is to tell people where you're going and when you plan to come back. That way, if you do get lost, people will know as soon as possible. But to help stack the deck in our favor, let's cover 7 tips for surviving in the desert heat. Wear a hat. If you don't have a hat, wrapping your head in fabric will suffice. If the top of your head is exposed to sun for long periods, your body needs to invest more energy into keeping you cool, wasting valuable calories you could use to stay alive. Find shade as soon as possible. It's best to stay in the shade during the day and only exert yourself when the sun goes down, conserving energy. If you don't have an ample supply of water, only drink when you absolutely have to. It's better to take small sips throughout the day and assess how dehydrated you are by the coloration of your urine. If it's only light yellow, you're fine. If it's a dark color, then you need to find fluids ASAP. It's also not recommended to drink water you find as is, since it could be contaminated, and vomiting will waste more water than you'd get from whatever you're drinking. The only water you should drink is water you can boil, or purify using iodine or chlorine. Eating makes you thirsty, so limiting your food intake is a good idea. Your body can go much longer without food than without water, and the more you eat, the more water you'll need. It's best to only eat to keep hunger pains away, or to keep your strength up. Douglas Adams said it best: "Don't panic! Try to remain as calm as you can. Making decisions when you're panicking will lead to more mistakes, and in a survival situation, a single mistake is usually all it takes to keep you from coming home ever again. Just stay put for as long as possible. You'll either be found, or you can take that time to plan your next steps better. If no one is looking for you, well, that's really bad." These tips don't guarantee survival, but lengthen the amount of time people have to look for you. Always leave a trail. If you have to leave your original point, make a note that you were there and which direction you went. Not only will that help rescuers find you, it will also allow you to backtrack if you realize you made a wrong turn. Specifically, taking slow, concentrated breaths, ideally with your mouth and nose covered with a rag or mask, will help keep you from losing moisture out your mouth. Like I mentioned earlier, survival situations take more than just know-how and physical strength, but odds. Mauro knew his body's limits, and he knew what he was supposed to do. But whether or not he survived might be just beyond his control. Because when you're lost in the desert with little water, the difference between life and death is less about tactics or planning, but luck and time. April 19th, 1994, 7th day since Mauro disappeared. Mauro awoke, bewildered to be alive. He was very dehydrated, and the cuts on his wrists were shallow enough that dust and sand coagulated with his blood, sealing his wounds and preventing him from succumbing to blood loss. He sat up and thought to himself, "Maybe it's not my time yet." So he left the Marabou, stalking out into the lonesome desert once again. Cinzia was inundated with reporters asking about her husband. They talked about him in the past tense, which upset her. He was missing, not dead. At least, not yet. At the time, she said, Mauro is an incredibly strong man and also level-headed because he has always been an athlete and he knows how to deal with difficult situations. If we slow down, I'm afraid people will stop paying attention. Giovanni, at the same time, felt terrible because Mauro was only there because of him. Giovanni was home in Sicily, but he didn't feel right about sitting around while his friend was lost and alone. So he traveled back to Morocco to keep searching for Mauro in case the organizers gave up. Cinzia said that Mauro has a sane insanity, that some call it resilience, but resilience is getting knocked down and being able to get back up. But with insanity, when you get knocked down, you never land. According to her, Mauro never hits the ground. As Mauro left the Marabou, he was sure that he could survive, though he was thinner and weaker than he'd ever been in his life. He was constantly shaking. All of the bones in his hands jutted out from under his skin, and he was so thin that even though he tightened his watch as far as it would go, it still jangled loose around his wrist. His eyes had also sunken deep into his sockets. As he marched through the desert once more, he caught snakes and lizards, eating their flesh raw, drinking their blood for hydration. He also followed the teachings of a Tuareg nomad he met before the race began, who instructed him to find life in the direction of clouds at dawn. The Tuaregs are part of an indigenous Berber population in the Sahara area. Mauro set his compass in that direction and just kept on walking. April 20th, 8th day since Mauro disappeared. He found an oasis which sated his thirst. He also discovered sets of footprints in the sand. Someone was near. He stayed by the water for 7 hours before setting out again. The 9th day brought a surprise he hadn't expected. Goats. Strolling along the arid drylands were a small herd of goats. Mauro wasn't confident enough to kill and eat one, but this had to mean people were close by, and he was right. Later in the day, as he passed a large dune, he saw a small girl out of the corner of his eye. He was ecstatic, but she ran off. As Mauro searched for her, he saw them, a set of tents nestled in the shade. Soon, a group of women emerged from the camp and brought Mauro in. All of the men were away at the market, so the women of the camp set up Mauro under a veranda before sending word to the authorities. They gave him goat's milk to quench his thirst, as well as some food, but he was too weak to keep it down. After some time, a jeep drove up to the camp, depositing 2 soldiers who took Mauro into custody. It didn't take long for the military to arrive, since nomads of the region often camp near military bases for protection. Mauro was blindfolded and pinned to the ground with their rifles. This was his first real moment of fear. He thought, here we go, they're going to shoot me and leave me here. He was then taken to a military outpost, but it wasn't Moroccan. Over the course of the last 10 days, he had wandered 180 miles south of where he was first lost, into Algeria. He was questioned for a time, since the Algeria military needed to make sure he wasn't a Moroccan spy, scouting their military installations. Thankfully, they quickly determined that he was the runner who had gone missing earlier in the month. By April 24th, the 12th day since Mauro had gone missing, Cinzia had stopped answering the phone. She could only expect reporters asking for quotes or the authorities telling her that they were calling off the search. Cinzia's mother had been around to help her take care of the kids and keep nosy journalists out of her daughter's hair. A phone call came in, and when her grandmother heard the voice on the other end, she perked up. Hello, Mauro? Mauro? Are you alive? She threw the phone to Cinzia, and as she put it to her ear, Mauro asked, have you already made funeral arrangements? Cinzia, happy to hear his voice, but seething with anger, replied, well, we can't have a funeral without a corpse, so what are we supposed to do? Cinzia's mother then ran outside in her bathrobe, shouting, he's alive! He's alive! People came out of their homes to celebrate. When Mauro finally came home, he had lost 35 pounds, weighing only 99 pounds in total. He was weak, but alive. In the following years, Mauro had been the subject of conspiracies, including the suggestion from Patrick Bauer, the founder of the Marathon des Sables itself, that Mauro's story is pure fabrication, saying that he will have you believe he is Superman. It is physiologically impossible for a man to travel more than 200 kilometers in the desert without water. This is a supernatural act. At the end of the day, when the sun finally descends below the horizon and we can start moving, survival in the desert hinges not on strength, but preparation and luck. One way or another, if Mauro was found early into his ordeal, or if he truly spent 10 days alone, his survival was a measure of incredible luck.